IT all set? Excellent. Good morning. Today we will be making history. This is the first meeting of the Peace Officers Standards Accountability Advisory Board in the history of California. My name is Joyce Dudley, and I'm the board chair. Today is December 14th, 2023. We are here today as a direct result of the hard work of peace officers, activists, legislators, voters, Governor Newsom's office, and the staff of Post under the extraordinary leadership of its executive director, Manny Alvarez. We are also here because historically, people have been treated unjustly or have been unjustly accused. Some of those people include victims, their loved ones, and law enforcement officers. To quote Dietrich Bonhoeffer, quote, "We are not to simply bandage the wounds of victims beneath the wheels of injustice. We are to drive a spike into the wheel itself." We are here to listen carefully, think thoughtfully, and act judiciously as we seek truth and justice for all. To quote Mahatma Gandhi, quote, "Truth never damages a cause that is just." Our primary mission is to protect the public and all constitutional and statutory rights. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertion and passionate concern of dedicated individuals, which is why all of you were chosen to serve on this board. To end my personal comments, I will leave you with the words of Robert F. Kennedy. "Few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events. It is from numberless, diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. Each time a person stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, they send forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance." I want to personally thank you all for joining us today, the board and members in our community. Before the meeting officially begins, allow me to remind you that this meeting is being webcast, recorded, and transcribed. So I may ask you to slow down, repeat things, or speak more clearly so that our transcriber can most accurately capture the discussion of our minutes. Further, please note that the microphones are on and off. When you begin speaking, they may go live. With this in mind, you will need to pay attention to your crosstalk. Mr. Knapp, please call the roll call.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning. Board Member Buchan. Board Member Clavo.
Present.
Board Member Crawford.
Present.
Board Member Doyle.
Here.
Board Member Dudley.
Here.
Board Member Glazer.
Here.
Board Member Johnson.
Present.
Board Member Lara.
Present.
And Board Member Pena.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. A quorum has been established. There are 8 members here today. I would like to introduce, and the name of this board, the initial of this board, POSAAB. I'm not sure that's any easier to say than the full board name, but it's POSAAB. And so our legal counsel is Christopher Beatty. Thank you for being here. And Post Assistant Executive Director, Anne Marie Delminato. Okay, and she's to my right. Public comment. This time is set aside for members of the public who wish to comment on items not on the agenda, but those within the board's jurisdiction. Public comments on matters on the agenda will be heard after each item is presented. Public comment on specific peace officer revocation cases will be heard later. At that time of each such matter, we will be able to hear individuals speak on those matters. I may ask members of the public to limit their remarks in time pursuant to existing board policy. I may conclude the public comment period if multiple speakers are voicing repetitive or similar statements and the 15-minute public comment period has expired. Members of the public who wish to speak are asked to limit their remarks to no more than 3 minutes each. If we have many people who wish to speak on the same topic, I, as the chair, may intervene and will ask that you limit your remarks to no more than 1 minute. Please be advised that the board cannot take action on items not on the agenda, but only to the extent necessary to determine whether they should be made an agenda item at a future meeting. Respond briefly to statements or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the items to staff. Members of the public who would like to provide public comment may approach the designated table right there. And thank you. And the microphone at the front of the room. Please remember that this meeting is being transcribed. So once again, I may politely interrupt and ask you to repeat or speak slowly and clearly so your comment can be correctly captured in the transcript. Before I open public comment on matters not on the agenda, please note that if you have a specific complaint on an officer that is not on today's agenda, you should file a complaint with Post or with the officer's employment agency. Staff will assist you in this matter. I would like to remind individuals making comments to not discuss pending complaints or pending discipline actions that may later come before this board for a recommendation. If the board takes action on your complaint, you will have an opportunity to address the board at that time. Following these rules is necessary to comply with the law and to avoid compromising the board's mission. Now, is there anyone who would like to address the board during this public comment period? Seeing no one, we shall proceed. At this time, Assistant Executive Anne Marie Assistant Director Anne Marie Delminato would like to address the board and pronounce her name correctly because I keep not pronouncing her name correctly.
You've actually done a terrific job. It's not an easy name to pronounce. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne Marie. I am the Assistant Executive Director for Peace Officer Standards Accountability Division. This is the division that was prompted in SB2 to do the investigations and review of complaints that come before the board. I first want to thank Chair Dudley for her compelling opening remarks. And I echo both the importance of the board and the opportunity that is before us today for transparency and accountability to this process. I want to open today's meeting with a little bit of an insight into what the division has done since January 1st, 2023, with regard to taking in the complaints, charges, allegations, and completed investigations with regard to officer misconduct. So if we could put up some stats this morning, we have a few statistical documents here that I'd like to share. So I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I want to point out just the sheer volume. So since January 1st, 2023, there's been 21,364 reports of serious misconduct that have been received by post. As we mentioned yesterday, much of this, 73% of this, involves cases that are considered look back. That's from January 1st, 2020 forward. There is a number of allegations that may come in for each of the reports received by the division. So you see that third column there, third data point, is actually number of allegations. What we're hoping to provide you in the near future is the number of officers that are reflective in these reports and allegations. We further collect stats, and we do publish these stats at every commission meeting. And we'll also be publishing stats on our website, in addition to the actual agency reporting of cases of serious misconduct and the actions that have been taken as a result. Of the 615 agencies that are under post, 59% of those agencies are reporting. You'll see 41%, there's 41% of the agencies that we have not received a report on to date. But of those agencies, they have less than a dozen peace officers. Therefore, they may not have acts of serious misconduct at this point. The reason we think it's important to publish the reporting of the agencies is so the public has, it's transparent first and foremost, and the public has an opportunity to look at the reporting history of each and every agency. There's also some statistics there regarding immediate temporary suspensions, voluntary surrenders, ineligibilities that are as a result of a felony conviction prior to January 1st, 2022, and revocations as a result of a felony conviction after January 1st, 2022. So I offer you this just as an insight and a picture of the volume of what the division is dealing with today in terms of investigations, review, and proceedings that will, at some point, they rise to the level of serious misconduct by clear and convincing evidence come before this board. Are there any questions on the statistics that I've presented before we move on?
Oh, go ahead. All right. Just my question is with respect to the zero report agencies. Are they just not reporting, or is there a requirement that they report that they have zero events or zero cases?
Thank you, Board Member Glazier. At this point, there is no mechanism by which Post can enforce reporting. However, what we are doing is we are sending notices out to zero reporting agencies to request just that. Have you not had any reports of serious misconduct because you have a limited number of peace officers within your agency, or have you failed to submit a report that otherwise falls under SB 2? And so we will be reporting out on that as well. But thank you for your question.
Any other questions from board members? Thank you, Anne-Marie. At this time, I would like to call upon Bureau Chief Sarah Wallace to discuss the new business items. Good morning, Ms. Wallace.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board.
Just before we go on, Anne-Marie, is there any evidence that the agencies have had zero reporting, that they've had cases and they're just not reporting them?
No, to date, we don't have evidence to suggest that they have failed to report, just that they have not reported anything since January 1st. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to add to that. Is there any way that you can break down your report to show the counties, by counties, that they're reporting or not reporting?
We actually have a list of agencies and we currently have those statistics. So we are making those available by the end of the month. So they're going to be on our website and you'll be able to look at every agency and see what their reporting history has been. You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks again, Anne-Marie and Sarah.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Before you today, we have several new business items to present. The first of which is a proposed regulation to adopt a conflict of interest code pursuant to Government Code Section 87300. This government code requires new state agencies to designate positions who make or participate in making decisions, who may have an economic or material impact on the decision-making process to adopt a conflict of interest code section. Today before you in your meeting materials, our legal counsel here at Post has drafted a proposed regulatory section to incorporate into Post regulations, which would effectively incorporate by reference the Fair Political Practices Commission's regulation relating to conflict of interest. This regulatory language is out for approval and review by the Fair Political Practices Commission. We are currently waiting for feedback. If the board would like to adopt this conflict of interest code section today, then we would move forward with a formal rulemaking process to post it for public comment for 45 days, and it would go through the Office of Administrative Laws review process. Today in your board meeting packet is the proposed language for consideration. Board members would also be required to file a statement of economic interest or Form 700 annually to declare any economic interests that would need to be sought out as part of the rulemaking process. We have our board counsel here today to answer any questions if there's anything, and I'm happy to answer questions as well.
Do any board members have any questions or comments? Okay. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the board regarding this specific agenda item? Seeing no one, are there any questions from the board? If the board concurs, the appropriate action would be a motion to adopt the proposed policy for the board. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion, Dora.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none. The motion then is unanimous and the motion passes. Please go on, Ms. Wallace.
Thank you. Next, we have a series of 4 proposed policy documents for the board's review and approval. The first of which is an administrative requirements policy that has been drafted. This administrative requirements policy reviews the board's responsibility to review cases of serious misconduct, outlines communication requirements, and outlines how to handle media requests, outlines the mandatory training requirements, the conflict of interest requirements, and the acceptance of gifts. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do any board members have any questions? I'm going to do this about 5 more times so everyone starts to pick up the rhythm on this. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board regarding this particular agenda item? Seeing none. Are there any questions? Yes.
I have a question, actually. And this is on the media portion of it, that if a board member receives a media call, that we should promptly refer the caller to the post office public affairs. Is that a standard practice with boards to do that?
Thank you. Yes, in our experience, that has been a standard practice with multiple departments across state agencies where all calls are referred to their Office of Public Affairs to handle the media requests.
And I can tell you in the 6 years that I was chair of the commission, I followed that practice. So it is part of the general rules.
Considering the position I hold in the county, I do media responses to current issues, sometimes involving law enforcement, wearing my other hat. Would that be a conflict? I know as long as I don't address anything that Post is currently working on.
I can give you an answer, but then I'm also going to turn to
Okay.
the real lawyer at the table. The answer would be not using the title of this committee and not mentioning the board member, but certainly we want you to go ahead and do the excellent work you've been doing. Counsel?
I think that's right. And then not addressing current cases.
So those are kind of the lines of demarcation that are significant and important to respect, but I think all board members are going to be encouraged to continue their work because that's why they're here. And so we,
So I guess, you know, when you're speaking to the media, they like to try to loop in things. I would then contact you to let you know if they try to loop in something, because a lot of times I shut them down, but
But you grant an interview, so you're in control.
okay.
And certainly, please let us know. Thank you. A board member, Pina, did you have more you wanted to say on that?
No.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Is there a motion?
I'd like to
I
make a
make a motion.
motion. Oh, forgive me.
Okay, thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, seeing none, then the motion is passed. On to the next policy, Ms. Wallace, which is the board meeting procedures.
Yes, the next policy before the board is our board meeting procedures draft. This policy outlines all of the requirements for board meetings in accordance with the Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act. It outlines the frequency of meeting requirements, attendance, communication, public participation, the notification of meetings, the use of electronic devices during meetings, and it also outlines a policy relating to the delegation to the chair to finalize any recommendations made by the board to move to the commission. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Ms. Wallace, for the sake of the transcriber, I'm going to ask you to slow down just a little bit, but thank you so much. And is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none? If the board concurs, then it would be appropriate to ask for a motion on this point. Is there a motion? A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion, it's all unanimous and the motion passes. Sarah, on to the next one.
The next policy outlines the general requirements for conduct and performance of board members. It includes general rules of conduct, including items relating to confidentiality and the board's primary mission. Again, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You. Are there any members of the public who wish to address this issue? Seeing none, are there any questions from the board? Okay. Is there a motion? Thank you. A second?
Second.
I'm going to ask the transcriber, would you like people to say their names when they make a motion? Okay, sure. Okay, so we very much appreciate the motion and the second, but if you could say motion by, give your last name, second by. Thank you so much. So we had a motion, we had a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. Okay, Ms. Wallace, next.
The last policy before the board today is in relation to travel and compensation. This policy establishes the standards for appropriate business and travel expenses, outlines the requirements for travel arrangements, travel claims, and provides the maximum reimbursement rates, which are now effective, new rates that will become effective on January 1st, 2024. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Any public member want to make a comment? Seeing none, is there a motion? Thank you. Last name.
Nicole Clavo.
Thank you.
I second it, Crawford.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? Seeing none, this motion also passes. And I want to thank all the board members for doing all that reading last night. Obviously, you were very prepared and it's very much appreciated. Okay, we now move to the next items on the agenda, and that is the two cases that are before us today. We will only be reviewing the facts and evidence as presented by the division. This is not an evidentiary hearing. The rules of evidence do not apply. Evidence is not formally admitted into the record. There is no need to make any objections, and objections will not be ruled upon. Under the Penal Code and applicable state regulations, This initial hearing will determine only if the matter will proceed forward for the commission's review. And then, should the commission approve for a full evidentiary hearing before an administrative law judge to determine whether the allegations are true and justify discipline. For those commenting on each item at this early stage, the board must only consider the facts that the division, after investigation, believes can be proved at a later evidentiary hearing. For that reason, today, the board will entertain arguments as to whether or not those facts as presented by the division demonstrate a high probability that serious misconduct as defined in Penal Code Section 13510.8 and Regulation 1205 occurred. This finding simply results in the matter being moved forward. No actions by the board or the commission prior to a full evidentiary hearing amount to a final determination that an officer did in fact engage in misconduct or that the revocation or suspension is mandated. That will be determined after the evidentiary hearing. At this time, I will now call upon law enforcement consultant Trevor Shields, Professional Conduct Southern Bureau, and Carrie Woolley, Attorney Level 3, Legal Affairs Bureau, to provide a report on case post 230-8479, Justin Raymond Ramirez, formerly of the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Thank you both. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Trevor Shields. I'm a law enforcement consultant with Post's Professional Conduct Bureau, Southern Bureau, or Conduct Southern Bureau. Seated to my right, let you introduce yourself, Carrie.
My name is Carrie Woolley. I'm an attorney 3 with the Legal Affairs Bureau for Post.
This case does involve former Deputy Justin Ramirez of the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Deputy Ramirez was trained and assigned as a school resource officer. Like all peace officers, school resource officers are held to a higher standard of conduct. School resources act as teachers, counselors, role models, and protectors of our children. Deputy Ramirez violated his duty to protect the children by utilizing his personal cell phone to show 2 separate groups of 14-year-old freshman female students 2 videos and 2 photos that contained harmful matter as defined by California Penal Code 313A. If we could get it put up on the, actually,
Thank you.
The other one, yes.
Is that not the penal code?
Next
you want?
slide, please.
Next slide.
Okay.
It's the definition of harmful matter as according to the penal code.
That's correct.
Stand by.
Want me to read it?
Would you please read the definition?
Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
As used in this chapter, harmful matter means matter taken as a whole, which to the average person applying contemporary statewide standards appeals to the prudent interest and is a matter which taken as a whole depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct and which taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. The Orange County Sheriff's Department conducted a criminal and administrative investigations. They sustained departmental policy violations of serious misconduct against Deputy Ramirez. They referred a criminal complaint to the Orange County District Attorney's Office. The Orange County District Attorney's Office filed one misdemeanor charge of 313.1A of the California Vehicle Code, which was distributing harmful matter to a minor. The following are facts to the serious misconduct charge of acts that violate the law. On September 2nd, 2022, Deputy Ramirez was on campus at Trabuco High School in Mission Viejo during the freshman lunch period. Deputy Ramirez knew or should have known the students around him were high school students under the age of 18. Deputy Ramirez was in full uniform. He was seated in his patrol car when he was approached by several freshman students. These students asked him questions about events he's seen in his job as a deputy sheriff. Specifically, and I quote, "What was the most horrible call you got?" Instead of using this student interaction as a positive teaching moment and providing an age-appropriate response, Deputy Ramirez used very poor judgment and utilized his personal cell phone to show the group of 14-year-old freshman students the two videos and two photos containing explicit, graphic, sexual, and violent content, as well as one of illicit drug use, all of which was not appropriate for juveniles. Deputy Ramirez was not part of these events he was showing. He was not on scene, and he was not part of the investigation of these events. The first video depicts two individuals engaging in sexual intercourse who were subsequently stabbed by an assailant with a knife, resulting in the death and apparent death of one of the victims. The video is very explicit and graphic in nature and shows the faces and intimate body contact between the victims. The second video shows two males sitting on the ground in a room smoking a controlled substance, most likely crack cocaine, from glass pipes. The males engaged in an explicit activity of blowing narcotic smoke into the intimate body part of another. The deputy also showed two students two photos. The first was of a deceased young female, similar age as the students. The female was laying in a roadway as a result of a traffic collision with a severe head injury. The second photo was taken in a hospital setting depicting severe lacerations to a female's leg from the bite of a sheriff's canine. Deputy Ramirez repeated the act of showing these same videos and photos to a few minutes later to a new group of freshman female students. These students came over to him after hearing about the videos and photos from the first group of students. Each student had a different reaction to being shown these images. One student stated she will never forget the image of a, quote, a 17-year-old girl on the street. There was a gash and her brains were coming out. Later, that same student said, I quote, that's actually somebody dying in front of my face. One of the students was disturbed enough to share what she saw with her mother, who turned around and called the Orange County Sheriff's Department to report the incident, which led to this investigation. The Orange County Sheriff's Department investigation, or during the Orange County Sheriff's Department's investigation, Deputy Ramirez resigned from the Sheriff's Department on December 14th, 2022, prior to his administrative interview, and has not provided a statement. On the PowerPoint is the definition of the criminal charge he was charged with. Madam Chair, would you like me to read the law? Or okay. California Penal Code 313.1A Every person who, with knowledge that a person is a minor or fails to exercise reasonable care in ascertaining the true age of a minor, knowingly sells, rents, distributes, sends, causes to be sent, exhibits, or offers to distribute or exhibit by any means, including but not limited to live or recorded phone messages, any harmful matter to the minor shall be punished as specified in section 313.4. On April 25th of this year, Deputy Ramirez appeared in Orange County Superior Court on one misdemeanor count of this section of 313.1A. Despite opposition from the Orange County District Attorney's Office, the court granted Deputy Ramirez a misdemeanor pretrial diversion under Penal Code Section 1001.95. As part of that agreement, Deputy Ramirez agreed to commit no new misdemeanor or felony crimes, performed 40 hours of community service, complete sensitivity training, comply with the stay-away order, and pay a diversion restitution fee. Information obtained during this investigation was analyzed by the clear and convincing evidence standard. For purposes of this investigation, clear and convincing evidence means evidence of a charge is clear and convincing so long as there is a high probability that the charge is true. The evidence need not establish a fact beyond a reasonable doubt. As a school resource officer, Deputy Ramirez was entrusted with an extremely high level of public trust in the community, namely the safety and protection of the community's youth. He received training from his agency as a school resource officer. Deputy Ramirez's actions were egregious and repeated. They were inconsistent with the obligation as a peace officer to uphold the law and respect the rights of members of the public. Deputy Ramirez not only violated the penal code, but showed his lack of judgment and disregard for his assignment as a deputy and a school resource officer. Deputy Ramirez should have acted as a role model for these students, not exposing them to explicit, graphic, and violent material. He chose to show this inappropriate material not once, but twice to two separate groups of 14-year-old female students, while in uniform and sitting in a marked patrol vehicle at a high school. Based on the facts of this case, as described here and in the investigative summary and findings, there is clear and convincing evidence that Deputy Ramirez committed acts that violate the law defined in Penal Code Section 13510.8 B6. Therefore, the recommendation is that Deputy Ramirez's peace officer certificate be revoked. If the board has any questions, Carrie and I would be happy to answer them at this time.
I know all of you have reviewed the documentary evidence that was sent to you, and all of you have seen the videos that have been described as well as the photographs. So do any of you have any additional questions or comments? I have one question, and then I'll be calling upon Board Member Doyle. Perhaps I misunderstood this, but when the parent of the daughter who explained to her what happened at school, that alleged victim, then after her daughter told her what happened, that parent then called 911 or the sheriff's department. And was it true, in fact, that the responding officer was Officer Ramirez?
Yes, it was.
So he interviewed the child who he in fact showed this photo to.
Briefly, yes.
Okay. And then at some point he came to realize that it was in fact he who she was describing.
That's correct.
Okay. And then another officer came in.
He contacted his supervisor who came to the scene.
Okay. So there was a period of time, moments, I don't know, where he, in addition to showing the photographs and the videos, where he then took a report about his own behavior.
Correct.
Okay, and about how long was that?
From the time he arrived at the residence to the time the supervisor arrived, I believe it was, I don't know exactly. I'd have to give you an approximate, it was approximately 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay, during that period of time, do you happen to know if he stayed with that child or whether he immediately took himself out of the case?
He did not. He did. When he realized that this case was about him, he did excuse himself, went out to his patrol car. That's where he made a phone call to another school resource officer and to his supervisor.
Okay,
When his supervisor arrived, they then went back into the house. He was not alone with the child.
but when, and I believe this was all in your report, he waited outside, and then when his supervisor arrived, he again entered that house where this child and her mother were.
Correct.
Okay. Yes, Board Member Doyle.
The decision to provide diversion, was that a Orange County court policy?
Yes. Oh, that's probably more of a,
It would have been within the discretion of the trial judge. It was over the objection of the district attorney. I believe the district attorney who handled the case was supposed to be appearing today. If he's here for public comment, he may be able to answer that question in full.
Board Member Doyle, he's due here at about 10 o'clock.
No, that's sufficient. I just wanted to know, because I know there are misdemeanors that are excluded from diversion, and just wanted to clarify if that was a board policy to pretty much divert most
Right.
misdemeanors. Okay,
It
thank
would
you.
have been excluded had it been registrable under Penal Code Section 290. This was not, though.
Board members have any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, just on Chair Dudley's earlier point, in your report, it says on page 6, in the 4th paragraph, that the sergeant that he called Sergeant Huerta assisted the respondent to complete his interviews by talking with the parents so the respondent could interview student number 1 in the adjacent room. Did that interview occur in the adjacent room, or did they just set that up and then it got scuttled?
no, he did interview the student in an adjacent room. But there was a little, Deputy Ramirez wasn't 100% completely honest with the supervisor. I don't believe the supervisor at that point knew that this was about him. And I think things would have been a little different maybe. It wasn't until after they exited the residence that Deputy Ramirez came a little bit forward with what he thought was going on.
But that interview had occurred in the adjacent room between the respondent and the student
That is correct.
alone.
It's still within it's within the house. They were within eye shot of each other, the parents and the sergeant.
Are there any other questions or comments from any other board members at this time?
Is there, actually, I have a question. Was there any explanation, I didn't see it in the report, about the evolution of the story that the deputy gave to Sergeant Huerta? The story began, he did not pour out, the videos were not of a sexual nature. And then later on, the story becomes something different that he explains to the supervisor. Was there any expansion on why that might have happened?
There was not. It was, he told them at the scene before they left that that it might have been about him. And then later on in the shift, he then, I think, was probably trying to write the report and contacted the supervisor and gave him that further update that he did show a couple of videos and photos to students.
And to your point, Board Member Laura, he was not interviewed for the administrative investigation. He resigned prior to being interviewed.
Are there any other comments, questions? Yes, Mr.
Yes,
Johnson.
I do have a question. How did he come to get the videos? I guess first question. And the second question is, there's a violation, I'm not sure what code, of the evidence that he had on his phone, which is a private phone, his personal phone for what I believe. So the first question is, how did he come to get the videos? And was it okay for him to have those on his phone?
I'm not sure how he came to get him. He was not part of those investigations, whether they were sent to him by another person, deputy, friend. I don't know who sent them to him. There were quite a few photos on his phone when the sheriff's department did a search warrant. There was a homicide investigator that completed the criminal portion of the report of Orange County's report, and he did go through all, I believe it was close to 18,000 videos and photos. When I spoke with him, he said that there was nothing criminal in nature that specifically was criminal to possess. It became criminal when Deputy Ramirez showed them to the underage females.
I do have a question.
One moment, please. Was there a follow-up on that, Mr. Johnson?
No, he answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
The law that I think you're referring to is Kobe's law, and that law wasn't yet enacted. And yes, Ms. Pena,
Kobe's law is what I was gonna comment on.
thank you. Anything else? Any other questions from the board? Yes.
So they kind of answered the question about the Kobe's law. When did the sheriff's department, did he voluntarily show the videos, or was it during at the time that they got the search warrant to go to the house and they obtained this, the videos off of his person's phone?
The search warrant, they called him into I believe it was their city hall, and they had the search warrant, and he voluntarily, he certainly didn't fight them, provided those phones in accordance with that search warrant.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board regarding this agenda item? I believe we have someone. Would you please identify yourself, sir?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, board members. My name is Robert Bauman, and I'm a representative for Deputy Ramirez.
Okay, thank you. And do you have a public comment regarding this matter?
Yes, ma'am. Just a couple items that I wanted to address. The first piece is, as it relates to Deputy Ramirez, it has been mentioned that he did not provide a statement, and the division has never reached out to conduct an investigation or any further investigation to discuss this with Deputy Ramirez. I think Deputy Ramirez's statement and what he says is imperative and pertinent to this investigation. And again, my understanding, unless I have a misunderstanding, is that the division does have the authority and the ability to conduct further investigation. Obviously, the standard before the board is clear and convincing evidence, which is a higher standard than what the department's burden of preponderance of the evidence. Therefore, I think Deputy Ramirez's statement is pertinent, and again, would shed light on a lot of these allegations, because as of right now, these are the allegations are being substantiated by one side, by statements by one party, essentially, without Deputy Ramirez's input. That was the first item I wanted to address and bring to the board's attention. The second item
May I
was—
interrupt you and
Yes,
just
please.
have them respond to that, and then we can go on to the next event?
Yes.
Is that okay? Please go ahead.
Thank you. I did just confer with Mr. Shields. That's true that the division did not reach out for a statement from Deputy Ramirez. However, I would like to point out that under the law, we are not obligated to reach out to Deputy Ramirez for a statement or to any officer from a statement if we feel that the investigation that was performed by the agency was sufficient in and of itself, which was the case here. We had the evidence from Deputy Ramirez's phones that corroborated, the victim's statements. We also had the evidence from Deputy Ramirez's statements to the other officer that was on his body-worn camera footage, where he indicated and admitted to the other officer that he in fact did show these videos to those children at the high school. So we felt that the investigation was complete and did not require further statements or investigation on our part.
Thank you. And please, you can either respond or go on to your next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to briefly respond, if there's other body worn camera footage or other evidence, again, I would request that that evidence be provided to Deputy Ramirez. Deputy Ramirez has not received that evidence, and therefore it would be a due process violation to move forward and use that evidence without him having opportunity to see that evidence and to respond to that evidence. So to move on, the second and last item I want to address as well, Madam Chair, is in the evidence provided by Post in their investigation summary, talking about the criminal case and the criminal investigation against Deputy Ramirez. In page 3 of 14, it specifically states that Deputy Ramirez pled guilty, and that is 100% incorrect. Deputy Ramirez has never pled guilty to the misdemeanor. And in fact, if you pull up the court status of the case, it clearly states that he pled not guilty to the misdemeanor allegation against him. So I want to bring that to the board's attention as well, that the document provided by Post is clearly false and misleading as it relates to that point. In further, Deputy Ramirez, and again, I'm just making the representation based on his representation, because I do not represent Deputy Ramirez in the criminal matter, is that he anticipates it, that the case will be dismissed come April, his next court date. So I think that is important clarification for the board, considering it is mentioned in the Post investigation summary, and it is inaccurate.
He did in fact accept diversion as a result of this charge. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. Counsel, did you want to respond?
I would, thank you. That is correct that our investigative summary and findings is factually inaccurate. I would not say it's false and misleading. Deputy Ramirez did accept a diversion deal, which requires that he agree to some terms with the court, and that he actually perform those terms in order for his case to be dismissed. But as counsel should be aware, under Penal Code Section 1001.97, even though his case would be dismissed, if he applies for another position as a peace officer, he would still have to disclose this arrest and the fact that he was given diversion. It would not be wiped clean from his slate.
Thank you. Counsel, is there anything else?
Nope, nothing further, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I will accept some more questions and comments from the board. Let me first ask, is there any other public member who would like to respond to this? What we'll do, just so everyone's aware of procedurally what will happen now, is I'll entertain any other questions and comments from the board. Then we'll take a break. And I believe at that point, there may be another person who wants to make public comment. So now back to the board. Board Member Doyle.
I have a question. I just assumed from the documents that we got that Ramirez refused to give a statement. And so I'm sort of concerned because having experience, you would never not interview the subject of an investigation just because all of the other evidence was overwhelming. And so I know they don't have to, but I don't understand why they wouldn't close that loop.
It's discretionary on the division whether or not to interview the subject officer. When we have a case like this where we have a large body of evidence and we actually have a video where it shows an admission by the officer, the division may make the decision at its discretion not to interview the officer. So it's simply within Post discretion whether to go ahead and interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes?
No.
Would any other board member like to make, please?
Question. On the photo of the young woman who was the victim of a automobile accident, was that a crime scene photo, a local crime scene photo, or was that from a website or obtained elsewhere, or do you know?
I don't know for sure. I know it is within the county of Orange County. The Orange County also has a coroner division. So somebody from the Orange County Sheriff's Department's coroner division would have come out. I don't know who took the photo or how it was sent to Deputy Ramirez.
But it was a local photo.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments at this time? Okay, we'll be taking breaks at about every hour, every 15 minutes, or an hour and 15 minutes to give the transcriber a break. So we will now, it's approximately 3 minutes to 10. We'll now break until approximately 10:08. Thank you all. Okay. This is my granddaughter's favorite part of my job. Having banged the gravel, we are back on. And at this time, I'll ask again, is there anyone in the audience who would like to make a public statement?
Yes, no one else.
Please, come on up. And please state your name and your agency if you'd like.
Yeah, I sit.
Sure, please sit.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Bradbury. I appreciate you all opening this to public comment. Appreciate you opening. Comment. There we go. Like I said, my name is Matthew Bradbury. I'm a deputy district attorney in Orange County, and I'm the deputy DA who filed the criminal charges against Mr. Ramirez earlier this year. So I'll be brief because I know that a lot has been said already. We do have the criminal case. The criminal case is in diversion. Just to kind of hammer home some of the major points that we felt made it necessary to file criminal charges here. Mr. Ramirez was working as a deputy sheriff. He was on campus at a high school in South Orange County. Some high school girls, teenagers approached him, and I think they thought it was just kind of a friendly, casual conversation. He showed them videos and photographs that were extremely inappropriate. Inappropriate to show anyone not affiliated in law enforcement, let alone, freshmen in high school, female freshmen in high school. Based on that, the girls told their parents. They made statements to the effect of being shocked and traumatized by what they saw. One of the girls' parents called the sheriff's department, and then that's how the internal affairs investigation opened up. It then came to us at the district attorney's office. My unit at the DA's office looks at all of these internal affairs cases, and we usually don't file charges, to be honest. But this is one that we did. There was an additional search warrant that was done of Mr. Ramirez's phone, and apologies if you know all this already. But the search warrant showed additional photographs and videos that we felt were very inappropriate, including photographs from other crime scenes that he had kept on his personal phone. And without speculating why he chose to do that, two of those photographs were of dead bodies from other crime scenes in Orange County. There was other material, personal material to him that we also felt was very inappropriate for him to have, including a video that he took of himself while on sheriff's property, a selfie, but a video, if you will. And just there's a lot of material on there in that search warrant that we felt added to our general sense that Mr. Ramirez just does not have the judgment to be a peace officer. Now, that's obviously not what we decide, but it was part of the reason that we wanted to be here in person today. And we're very happy that this commission, which I know is brand new, is taking a look at this. And so we feel that all in all, not only the way that Mr. Ramirez behaved with the high school students, but also the other materials found on his personal device related to other crime scenes were more than just a lapse in judgment, but were really it just showed a complete lack of judgment on his part. And look, no one's saying that on the criminal case, he needs to spend a decade in prison. Of course not. It's a misdemeanor. But in terms of his ability to serve and wear a badge, in our view, that's just something he should be foreclosed from doing. And so again, I'll leave with, if you have not had a chance to see the videos and photographs, and I believe there were still images provided in the—
This board has seen the videos and the photographs, or at least most of the photographs you just described. This board has not seen any photograph of the defendant and in uniform, but the other photographs that you have articulated, they have seen. May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
There's been some discussion about the plea and about the meaning of diversion. Would you explain to us what the plea was and what the ramifications of diversion are?
Yes, definitely. So it is there has been no guilty plea entered. So state of California, Penal Code Section 1001, I think it's 0.6 is this form of diversion. We just call it misdemeanor diversion. It is a diversion without a guilty plea up front that is available to any defendant in Superior Court in California for a misdemeanor, barring certain specific misdemeanors. Like DUIs typically can't be diverted in this way. But so there's no guilty plea for Mr. Ramirez. It is a kind of an indefinite period of time where he has to perform counseling, community service, stay out of trouble, things like that. So he did accept that. He did not fight the case in the sense of, I'm taking this to trial. This is not true. Okay, but at the same time, he has not pled guilty.
Okay.
And it would lead, just sorry, quickly, it would lead to a dismissal if he were to abide by all those terms to stay out of trouble on the criminal case. It could take a year or two essentially at most.
The other question that was raised was, what was the district attorney's position on whether he should be able to be diverted on this case?
We objected to diversion pretty vehemently, actually. We not only objected to diversion, we also filed a motion to reconsider and actually went back to the same court. So we objected to diversion, again, based on the reasons I've outlined.
Okay, thank you. Let me just talk to the other board members, see if they have any questions or comments. Any other board member have any questions? Yes, please.
Yeah, just a simple question. If he were to be found to have violated the conditions of his diversion, what would happen subsequently?
That would reinstate the criminal case, and then we would be back in an open active criminal case. So at that point, it would have to go to, you know, he could fight it, go to trial, or he could plead guilty and resolve it, but that would end his diversion. But that would not mean an automatic conviction, if that's kind of what you're getting at.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Mr. Johnson?
Yes. He resigned. Did he give a statement on why?
I can answer that question. He did not. He just simply resigned prior to being interviewed for his internal affairs investigation.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you very much, counsel.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Are there any other, is there any other public comments on this case? Okay, with that said, at this time, the meeting will adjourn into closed session for deliberations on this case. As some of the case material is graphic and explicit in nature, and you've all heard about that, unredacted versions will be shown to the board if they request it in closed session now, because the public's interest served by not publicly disclosing the unredacted version clearly outweighs the public's interest in disclosure of the full unredacted versions. The board will now exit this room and go to the left, I believe, and view closed session material in secure room, and then come back again for regular discussion. And we should be coming back shortly. I'm not sure what that means because I need to hear from the board members. Thank you. testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, IT, you all set? Okay, excellent. We are back from closed session. We will now reconvene in regular session to take a vote on the board's recommendation to the commission. In the matter of post 2308479, Justin Raymond Ramirez, formerly of the Orange County Sheriff's Department, are there any other comments that the board members would like to make? Hearing none, is there a motion to make a recommendation to the commission on this matter? And what is that motion? Okay, there is a motion to decertify Mr. Ramirez. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. We will now take a roll call as to each member of the board articulating